Okay, so back from the Abraham cruise, got my hair braided. I'll post a video on it. It was the amazing Wanda on Antigua. Had the time of my life. I'm even more excited to be back. I did get a little bit of a bug. I've got a little thing in my throat, so um, but that makes sense too. I didn't sleep for a few nights. Was stressing about a few things, and I think I was actually just listening to an Alan Watts talking about how when you make a decision to do something new, like things show up. Like when you make a new decision to be healthy, you'll get sick. Or there's sort of, Abraham would say, when you start to meditate or really do this work, it's kind of, is it normal for the poop to hit the fan, right? The shit to hit the fan. And it is a little bit because you're changing your vibration and you're working out, I think, some of the resistances that have been holding you back. So anyway, I came back. I jumped right back into work. It's been intense. It's a physical job. I'm in a garden center. So it's like time to get in shape, which is great. But I'm off the next 2 days. So I close tonight and then I get to rest. So I'll feel great. But I wanted to come on and just say, I listened to a lot of free Abraham content for many years on YouTube. And then I realized I think there's something of a scarcity conversation in that. Like this is Esther's life work with Abraham, and I should be willing to invest in it. So I started going to workshops. My husband went with me, and we went to two. And then when we had the opportunity to book our honeymoon, he actually said, "Hey, let's go on a cruise with Abraham." Because I think we were starting to realize, it's not cheap to do, but when you're thinking about price only, you're kind of generating a constant scarcity conversation. And Abraham will say, "No, you should pay for it. You can pay for it. Like, create the desire and allow the abundance to float to you." So we decided to do that because we realized there's something in the vibration and energy. Everything is physics, we're vibration. So being around sort of this very loving, powerful vibration for 10 days on a boat, it's a very small, controlled environment. And a lot of us were on the boat. Like the boat was probably at least 1/3 Abraham Hicks followers, participants. And, Justin and I laugh about it because it's a little beamed aboard at times. But the vibration changes and then you just go, "Oh, well, that's just them doing their thing, and that's great. um, I'm going to focus on my thing and what I'm here to learn for my phase of development." And it's very interesting to go through that experience. It was 100% what I thought it would be. I think there's a vibrational shift if you go do something like that a bit more permanently. A stability. By the last workshop, it was like magic. It was just so many points just nailed again and again. And my hubby got on stage. He asked a few questions. That was amazing. He was crying. I was crying. It was like extremely powerful for him. And I had some questions that I didn't think got answered. And then as I went forward, really did. There's a lot of talk in Abraham about being selfish, like I've said, and it doesn't really jive with me, right? And then at the same time, Abraham was saying a lot, well, Jerry never wanted anyone to be diminished in his presence. So I'm like, those two things have to be resolvable, because to think I don't want anyone diminished in my presence would be a generally unselfish thought that I would think I would need to sort of tune myself to that person and make sure I'm pleasing them in order to not make them feel diminished. But that's not it. It's focusing on their positive aspects and just ignoring the rest. I don't even need to know the details. I don't need to know who they are. Just loving them as they are, being with them and focusing on their success, whatever that looks like. So it's interesting how these kinds of answers come out as you process, and I feel a new level of joy in my life. I was so happy to come home for the first time. I used to travel a ton, and there was always kind of this emptiness coming home to an empty house, or a house that wasn't filled with love. And I love my life. I get to spend the summer in a garden center where I fell in love with my husband, or met my husband anyway. Kind of fell in love there. I love all the plants. It's just a great situation. So anyway, these are all new emotions, to be just as excited to come back to my life and the dogs and the bunnies and my friends and Justin and build a home life with him. But to have that feeling is almost the biggest reward, like bigger than the vacation and the trip. But there is a vibrational shift. I can feel, having sort of just basked in that energy the way we did. That is something that is worth investing in, and I have a new clarity. So anyway, so I'm focusing on the positive aspects of people and situations versus the negative ones, and I'm really getting how it makes me feel different. If I start focusing on lack or fear, wow, it feels so different than when I'm focusing on things being really good. So that's awesome. I'm getting the contrast. I'm figuring it out, less wobble each day. But I came back and I opened it up to Neville. So it's a big intro, but it's funny. Neville is talking basically about the same principle. If you don't know Neville Goddard, he was around in the 30s. He called it the law of assumption. He used the Bible to basically talk about the law of attraction. And I think for those of us intrigued with Jesus and the Christianity message, but also not, and sort of resolving the two, Neville, I think, is that bridge, because he brings the Bible and explains it as sort of a Kabbalistic perspective and allegory, but I think you extract more power that way as far as a journey of human consciousness to awaken to your power as a creator, which is essentially what Jesus did. So let's read for a sec here. This is from chapter 12, called Attitudes from the Law and the Promise. Mental things are alone real. What is called corporeal? Nobody knows of its dwelling place. It is in fallacy and its existence an imposture. Where is the existence out of mind or thought? Where is it but in the mind of a fool? Blake. Memory, though faulty, is adequate to the call for sameness. If we remember another as we have known him, we recreate him in that image, and the past will be recognized in the present. That's what Abraham's always talking about recalling. If you continue to tell your old story, like write a new story, tell a new story, because the more you tell your old story, which I did for like decades, the more you recreate the same thing, which I did. So, but you can even do that to people. We don't realize that by saying, oh, he's a jerk, or she's a gossip, or, they're so negative. We keep them in that space, and, that's applying our own creative power of influence. Imagining creates reality. So you have the imagining device of God created in the image of God with the imaging device of God. And so your imagining is the creative force directing the power that creates worlds. And when you focus on something, you're literally creating there. And scary thoughts create a scary world. Violent thoughts create a violent world. Positive, loving thoughts create a positive, loving world, which at the end of the day makes us feel happy, which doesn't let anyone be diminished in our presence, but instead lifts them up, which lifts ourselves up. As Abraham said again and again, when you give other people the benefit of the doubt, you receive the benefit. So there's this beautiful relationship in sort of selfish selflessness. I don't know, it's a bit interesting. So imagining creates reality. If there is room for improvement, we should reconstruct him with new content, focusing on his positive aspects. Visualize him as we would like him to be, rather than have him bear the burden of our memory of him. Everything is possible to be believed in an image of truth. So if I truly believe it, if I can imagine it, then it can happen. The following story is by one who believes that imagining creates reality, and acting on this belief changed his attitude toward a stranger and bore witness to this change in reality. More than 20 years ago, when I was a green farm boy newly arrived to Boston to attend school, a panhandler asked me for money for a meal. Although the money I had was pitifully insufficient for my own needs, I gave him what was in my pocket. A few hours later, the same man, by this time staggering drunk, stopped me again and asked for money. I was so outraged to think the money I could so ill afford had been put to such use. I made myself a solemn pledge that I would never again listen to the plea of a street beggar. Through the years I kept my pledge, but every time I refused anyone, my conscience needled me. I felt guilty even to the point of developing a sharp pain in my stomach, but I couldn't bring myself to unbend. The early part of this year, a man stopped me as I was walking my dog and asked for money so he could eat. True to the old pledge, I refused him. His manner was gracious as he accepted my refusal. He even admired my dog and spoke of a family in New York State he knew that raised Cocker Spaniels. This time my conscience was really pricking me. As he went on his way, I determined to remake that scene as I wished it had been, so I stopped right there on the street, closed my eyes for only a few moments, and enacted the scene differently. In my imagination, I had the same man approach me, only this time he opened the conversation by admiring my dog. After we had talked a moment, I had him say, "I don't like to ask you this, but I really need something to eat. I have a job that begins tomorrow morning, but I've been out of work and tonight I'm hungry." I then reached into my imaginary pocket, pulled out an imaginary $5 bill, and gladly gave it to him. This imaginal act immediately dissolved the guilty feeling and the pain. I know from your teaching that an imaginal act is a fact, focusing on the positive aspects of a situation, the opportunity that could be in it, imagining it into reality. It's all very congruent. I know from your teaching that an imaginal act is a fact, so I knew I could grant anyone what he asked, and by faith in the imaginal act, consent to the reality of his having it. 4 months later, as I was again walking my dog, the same man approached me and opened the conversation by admiring my dog. "Here's a beautiful dog," he said. "Young man, I don't suppose you remember me, but a while back I asked you for some money, and you very kindly said no. I say kindly because if you'd given it to me, I'd still be asking for money. Instead, I got a job that very next morning, and now I'm on my feet and have some self-respect again." I knew his job was a fact when I imagined it that night, some 4 months before, but I won't deny there was an immense satisfaction in having him appear in the flesh to confirm it. It's an example of imagining into reality by focusing on positive aspects and not letting anyone be diminished in your presence. Thank you, Neville. Thank you, Abraham. Ta-ta for now.